Or is it round, right? So tubular would imply oftentimes carnivore. This looks like, what are some other delightful words on there? Yeah, what contents are in there? Is it hairy? Is there hair in there? Well, then they're a carnivore. Is there berries or seeds? Then they're a plant eater. Does its wetness is a little bit harder to tell from face scat, right? But how moist is it? Is it dried out? Is it chalky looking? Does it have a white texture, like a white coloring to it? So here, there's a few more. Everybody get a sheet? This is what other people go to the rest of it. Is that moose? Yes. Oh, wait. That typically means it's older than a year, and they don't have a whole lot of hair on their tails.
So why would they have moved?
Yeah, I wonder why they don't adapt.
Well, I think they started off with their range farther south, and over the last couple decades, as things get warmer in Michigan, they find they can kind of just keep crowding up, and
they don't go back when it's winter time.
no.
I wonder why
all of
they
a
would
sudden you get a
crowd up
bad
if
winter
there
and
must
kill
be
them.
other
Yeah.
advantages of
Their
migrating
average
north
lifespan
than
is like
losing your
18
ears
months,
and
so
your
they don't
tail.
live very long.
You know.
Yeah.
So I think it was fairly uncommon to see possums in northern Michigan 40 years ago.
Just not long lived.
So they just keep expanding their range
Yeah.
and seeming to survive it,
Yeah.
whereas 40 years ago they just wouldn't have.
Did possums
Yeah, but Kate,
hibernate?
Did they what?
Hibernate?
No.
Don't most mammals, northern mammals, at least slow down in the winter and kind of adapt to the lack of food?
These guys hibernate. Skunks slow down.
I know raccoon activity slows down just by my garbage cans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, raccoons slow down, but you can still find a raccoon in the
You get a
winter.
nice day, yeah.
Yeah, bunnies don't slow down. I mean, they slow down, they just don't.
What's that?
I don't think so.
I had one locked in my garage.
real
We kind of accidentally
But, I mean, most
Literally-
trappers don't even start trapping.
Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day.
Yeah,
And when I opened up, it didn't smell good, but
he still scampered away.
he scampered away, yeah.
Well, I actually don't think so, but we'll look it up. Let's look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, woodchucks, they are not awake in February. I don't know how they get those stupid woodchucks to wake up for Groundhog's Day.
They
They're
don't
pretty
look so
good.
happy about it.
Yeah, they're pretty good sleepers. So these are basic common critters that you're probably fairly familiar with.
Yeah.
They're not really known for like really luxurious coats or thick fur or
What's the
anything like
one
that.
on the end?
It's a cottontail. Yeah, must have been a pretty big one too, to be honest. And this isn't the softest fur I've ever felt. So, all right, let's move on to the red color here, right? Gray foxes are gray. Why do you think they might be gray? Camouflage, because what are they doing? Yeah, so they're tree climbers, right? So they oftentimes are up in a tree, and you don't even see them. You walked right by one. So that works out really well. If they're climbing up a tree, they blend in with the bark. They're not necessarily looking to blend in with some golden wavy grains, right? I'm missing a few mounts. I must just have another box in the center somewhere that I have not come across, but guesses?
Tail?
Arctic fox, yeah. So an Arctic foxtail. And weirdly, it has Velcro on it. I'm not sure what the story is there. I don't know the story.
I think it's
But
supposed to go on your costume.
yeah, maybe just snap it on.
Perfect convention.
So if you actually come and feel this tail, they wrap their tail around them, and the thickness and the warmth of that is pretty impressive. It's like having an extra body of heat. And so hair really does trap heat in it. We're gonna feel the deer pelt down there in a minute and kind of look at how hollowed out those hairs get in the wintertime. But it is thicker than you think it's gonna be. It's thick and sturdy, and they just kind of use it as a blanket. They just wrap it right around themselves. I wish I had more Velcro tails to compare. If you want to compare this one and this one, it's pretty significant difference in the thickness. I think fox kits are the worst. If you've ever seen a fox den, there's like dead bodies flung left and right. It's pretty apparent that that's what's happening right there. Yep, so, and then these little guys, so, let's see, these are long, this one's long-tailed, right?
Yeah.
And this one, I think, is just a long-tailed without its tail. But we have least weasels and short-tailed weasels as well. So that we've got quite a few little guys, some of which turn white in the winter. And of course, it's not really tied to how cold it is or how much snow. What's it tied to? Here it is, yeah, sunlight, yep. So white when they get more or fewer hours of sunlight, right? So it really has to do with the amount of daylight.
But its tail stays dark like that? Its
Say again?
tail is still dark.
Yep, yeah, just,
They're called ermines in that state.
yeah, apparently it doesn't need to have a, yeah, ermine, ermines are long-tailed weasels, right? And stoat is another word
I have
for it, yeah.
a question about the changing with the daylight. Do you know if there are scientists researching whether or not predation is impacted by climate change, given that there's less snow when they're turning?
I don't. Somebody should tell somebody to do that research.
Are there black-footed ferrets in Michigan?
Not in Michigan, but in the Great Lakes region, because it's in your Mammals of the Great Lakes region book.
Yeah.
So I think
know it's red
Minnesota
endangered,
maybe,
but I
probably,
couldn't remember.
yeah. Yeah, so our beaver over there, but, you know, their undercoat, if we were to shear this, would be similar to our beaver. And I'm going to reach in front of the camera here and grab these two. So this is from the same, obviously not the same exact animal, but the same species of animal. So here is a beaver pelt, like you're used to seeing a beaver. It looks like we've had some kids doing some damage here. Excellent. So the long outer fur is oily almost and waterproofs the animal. Whereas this undercoat is just super thick and ridiculously soft. So, you know, winter hat material would look like this, yeah. So those big winter hats. But then, yeah, this is the same product that you would felt a hat out of. So like Abraham Lincoln's hat was this stuff with a bunch of paste in it, right? So it was basically matted down and all kinds of horrible chemicals applied.
Those
Yeah.
were the beaver hats that they
Right.
that they
The Mad
trapped
Hatter.
all that they trapped all the
Yes,
beaver for.
right. So, yep. So Michigan was part of that.
Say again why they're different.
So if we were to give this a little razor cut and buzz cut off these taller oily hairs,
yeah.
underneath is that same coat.
Oh.
You can see it's been so well loved. You can see it without much work.
So it's not different seasons, it's just a hair.
No, they just have two kinds of hair at the same time. Yep. So super soft too. Same idea. Has the same thing going on. Just a lot smaller and clearly well loved. Well loved by kids.
You can't see that, start to see that.
Yeah, here on the side.
I like that.
This really is like something if you went to the fabric shop and went to the apparel section of some winter stuff.
This is why they were like blue shots.
Yeah.
What if they the harp seals skin make this white and they feel almost the same?
Yeah. So I'll just keep going. The famous Wolverine. The claws are still in pretty good shape on this one too. This one doesn't get touched as much, so do be gentle. But they have pretty thick hair. Same thing. You can tell that there's the soft undercoat. You can tell that there's a nice longer coat to keep them warm on the outside. These two you should really absolutely feel. So we've got a bobcat and a lynx. And so if you feel the toes, in between each of the toes, the hair is so thick. And you can imagine how much better it would be for a lynx to have hair just solid, they're like the best mittens ever, if you can figure out how to do that. But just compare the difference between a bobcat and a lynx. The fur is just so much warmer and softer. So that's kind of interesting. And then, like 4 or 5 times, and then I had a day where I was here alone, so I kind of like everything was pretty much already set up, but I had one station outside, and it was this station, and I just kind of hit it, and I put a little sign on it. I was like, don't take me, and somebody did, of course. But then we just put up a couple signs and posted on Facebook, and it just magically appeared one day. So I thought that was really nice. So thank you. If you know somebody that stole a deer or a bear pelt and then gave it back, we thank you.
Briefly had a
Yeah, so.
Halloween.
No, I don't, I mean, it was fall, it wasn't the fall, but I don't think it was like necessarily close to Halloween. So, it is kind of interesting to see, you know, this isn't that big of an animal. And we actually have a grizzly skull. I don't think I pulled it out. The grizzly skull, you guys have now seen a couple bear skulls, this one and the one inside. The grizzly skull is just so much bigger. They're just beyond 10 times the size of this thing. They're not the size, it's just night and day difference, and you would never mistake the two for each other. But feeling the claws of this bear, you can see, I wouldn't want to mess with a bear. I wouldn't want to be a bear's lunch.
They're big enough.
Well, a dog that big would be scared. Right? I'm not gonna mess with a
Maybe.
dog, a growling dog,
Yeah.
60, 70, 80, 100 pounds.
Yeah, so the females they're really, 120 to 180 pounds, somewhere in there. Males are bigger, but 300 pounds. I think in other states they're bigger, 500, 600 pounds?
yeah.
Not necessarily in Michigan,
I
but,
thought the record was like 600, but it was
Yeah.
captive bear.
Again, I had a bouvier that was about 100 pounds, and no one here would mess with that dog
yeah.
and survive it.
Is animal communication. So we know that mustelids use scent, right? Many of these animals use scent. Some of them have really good sniffers, and they can communicate with each other that way, like leaving scent behind. Bats use echolocation. A lot of our animals, pardon me, like I just said the word whistle pig back there, and people are like, a lot of our animals, they call them that because it's a warning signal, right? So if you've ever heard a groundhog that's living communally, if they get a predator nearby, they'll give a little whistle, and that warns everybody else. So it can be for a lot of different reasons. It can be to communicate with your young. It can be to communicate that you are the apex predator or the alpha male or whatever the case may be. There's lots of different reasons for communication. So I don't have 30, but I have a decent number. We pulled these out the other day for a program, and I was like, you can't really use them because of COVID, but these are all fresh. There's rubbing alcohol if you want to be extra fresh. And I think there's only maybe 13-ish different calls, and they're not even all different. But if you'd like to participate, I thought we could do a little bugle session for Tallulah, who had a birthday yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yep. So I've got quite a few here. If you're feeling brave and you want to toot on something, these are elk bugles. So everybody, I'll give you a little cotton swab, and it's fighting because all the guys have suits. So
Probably gonna bring you a wine.
there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's still 5 tools over here. Anybody brave enough, we'd love. I will take one if nobody else will do it, but I don't have to. Yeah, so then, what do I got? I got buck. This is a grunt, so a buck grunt. Yep, you can do that too.
This is really
This one's an elk.
cow and cat.
Yeah,
So that makes those rattles in discussion session.
yeah. So we need, who wants to be happy? What What animal wants to be happy? Let's make the cow elk. Cow elk, your word is happy. So every time we sing happy, you blow. Birthday, who wants birthday? Actually, birth.
Well, this, I think you have to read these.
Yep, so
So
you
these
should
are
all.
the repetitive words.
Okay, so who wants birth?
What do they call that, throat singing?
Oh, it's that meant protein.
We can do the rabbit.
Rabbits are birth and day. Okay, so happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Dear Tallulah. Wait, you should probably have dear
I can do Tallulah.
Tallulah. Did I miss anybody? Everybody's got a thing? Happy birthday to you. Okay, are we ready? So I'll sing happy birthday lightly, and then here comes our chorus. So all the elk are gonna go together. All the grunters and everybody know what their word is if you've got an instrument. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. I didn't think it could get better.
That is once in a lifetime.
So what we do and what I really like to do and find just extraordinarily interesting and captivating and I think worthwhile is pull people into what nature really is. Because we come out to places like this and we're like, ah, nature, but then we go into the city and we're like, ah, city. And really there's, you know, from the nature point of view, from the grand scheme of things, there's no difference between this and the city. What is happening is that this is a certain kind of landscape, and the urban situation, or suburban, is a different kind of landscape. And we just need to see, I think, how we can interact with all of these landscapes best to realize really that fundamental connection that we have with the landscape, and mostly to start to see that we are a part of nature, as much of a part of nature as any of these trees or anything else that's out here. Cars, gasoline, pesticides, nuclear bombs, all of it. It's all nature. There's no not nature. And so what do we do to really get into that and connect ourselves in a way that we can start to pull ourselves out of this kind of ecological catastrophe that we are currently facing right now. And really the only reason we're facing it is because we think we're somehow disconnected from everything that's around us. So can we just place ourselves back into it? So that's what, you know, kind of the main mission of ADAPT is. Sean, you've all met Sean Severance?
Yeah.
So Sean Severance and I have been friends for a long time. I used to work for the City of Ann Arbor Natural Area Preservation back when she just started working with the county. And so we have done a lot of work together over many, many years, including doing a lot of nature walks and planting gardens, doing ecological restoration. So she really enjoys, I think, the perspective that I take on all of this. I'm not a great naturalist. I'm not a great botanist. I'm a decent ecologist, but what I'm really good at, I think, is you know, figuring out what people are into and all working together to get us excited about doing good in the world. So I'm hoping that through whatever we see out there in the world today, you feel a little bit more deeply connected to the landscape and your own ability to kind of see this, interpret it for yourselves, learn how to read it, and then learn how to bring it back to wherever you are. And realize that this is not something that is fundamentally different from where you currently live. And going out into places like this and learning the natural history of any area that you're in can inform how you interact with and how you can heal, and I hate to use certain judgmental words like this, but kind of heal your landscape and make it really more diverse and more resilient. Before we get walking and get into the kind of botany and ecology of any of this, something that I really like to drive home is that this idea, you guys are all part of nature. Also, all of your neighbors and your community and your family members, they're all a part of nature as well. And we humans are so, even if we think we're like more plant people or more animal people, we're all human people. And the most important thing that we can do to take care of nature as a whole is take care of each other and really have good, strong relationships with each other. And especially in America, we're just getting like more and more politically fractured. Here, let me say this. I grew up in Chicago from a blue collar, working class kind of family. I tend to use colorful language sometimes, so is anybody against colorful language? Is anybody going to be offended here? It's okay if you are. Okay. So we keep getting deeper and deeper into this political rivalry. It's all bullshit. We have to figure out a way to get out of this. There are issues that are real, but you meet conservative people, you meet super liberal people, you actually like step out of that and you just start to talk to people and you realize that most people are just cool and you're all right, you can get along. So when you're talking about nature and when you really get into and start to understand the connections around all this, whatever you do, don't make it like political virtue signaling or like, it's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. Environmentalism is already a liberal thing, which is, to be completely honest, a fucking disaster. Don't let ecology become any kind of political thing. If your arguments start happening ever, you being the ones who know more about ecology, just say, okay, I'm sorry, back away. Because at the very least, right, you don't create more tension. So you can always, even though you know you're right, you can always just say you're wrong. At least in this point, you don't fracture your relationship with another person. So you keep that possibility open all the time. Because you'll never get anything out of hating another person. So that, I think, is the fundamental way that we can start really healing nature. Just being nice to each other. This isn't totally true for the Upper Peninsula. You're basically on a big dump of sand. And that is true for this area. Maybe talk about the interlobates. So you guys know we're in this really cool region of Michigan where two glaciers kind of smushed up against each other. And then as they retreated, they dumped a bunch of sand and gravel and then little deposits of clay here and there. And so you get this really cool varied topography. And then you get lakes down there where like a huge chunk of ice just, stayed there for a long time and then formed this lake. In areas where you have like the tops of hills, these tended to be, I'm saying these things as though you know them. Do you guys know hickories and oaks?
Yes.
So hickories have compound leaves. The ones around here are mostly 7 leaflets. There's mostly around here is shagbark, bitternut, and pignut. Shagbark, especially when it gets big because the bark starts flaking off. The bitternut has tighter little ridges as the tree grows up. But I think those all have 7 leaflets. If I were a natural areas manager in this, and just look at the amount of light that comes through. I would take advantage of this area. One of the first things I would do is I would cut these 2 trees down. I would just be like, these trees, no, I want less of them. I want fewer of them. So we have an American elm right here and a red maple. Red maples, I would be like, they have no room in this forest whatsoever. Like, they can be down in the swamps all they want, but up here they become huge weeds. So you can see there's another red maple right over there. You see how it's tiered out from, like 5 feet up to 20. It is really shade tolerant. And because it's shade tolerant, it can get into these other more open forests and it starts to take over. that one's still a little bit small, but you can start to see if you're in a really high quality oak woodland and you start to see it become invaded by red maples or sugar maples, that you'll have areas where there's just oaks and there's lots of diversity of the understory, and then you'll see kind of invasion by red maples and there will be no plants underneath them. In beech maple woodlands, of which there are a few examples within Waterloo, beech maple woodlands tend to be really shady. But in the spring, right, they don't have any leaves on the trees, so there's a lot of spring ephemerals that can grow up in beech maple woodlands, and they have beautiful shows of spring wildflowers. They tend to be in wetter areas, so they have high diversity of spring ephemerals. And then for the rest of the year, there's basically no understory. You'll have some ferns, and you'll have some Virginia creeper and some sedges. Very little, if any, fall flowering species. Oak woodlands have the spring ephemerals, and then you just have a continuous show of plants until the very end of the year. So grade into water.
It's a wetland that eventually becomes Mill Lake.
Okay, cool.
But there's cover around it.
Is it a bog or a fen? Do you know?
It's more of it's almost a swamp.
Okay, cool. Oak Savanna region. Again, wow, if this place started being burned and a little bit more actively managed, you know, this would be an area that you might want to start from and move out. So one thing that I see here is there's a lot of so there's Xanthonia spicata and Carex pennsylvanica. Xanthonia is called poverty grass. Really common grass of dry oak savanna regions, and Carex pennsylvanica is a sedge that it's called oak. There's hog peanut, which is a really common legume that produces a little edible ground nut. There's obviously a ton of Virginia creeper that's growing all along the forest floor here.
Is it native and invasive, or what is Virginia creeper?
It's native. It's just a native vine.
It's an aggressive native. Yeah.
It is an aggressive native.
Yeah.
Not nearly as aggressive as grapes.
Yeah.
And again, fire. You know, most of this would be gone. And then when Virginia creeper does grow up trees, it doesn't kill trees.
Bill, sorry, you have a question in the back there too.
Regarding Virginia creeper, does it provide any benefit to any insects?
Yeah, so, Virginia creeper, well, for one, man, is it gorgeous in the fall. So it provides a little bit of aesthetic pleasure. It freaks people out because they think it's poison ivy, and that's always fun. You know, it has insects that enjoy it. It produces a bunch of berries in the fall that the birdies love. And, you know, especially if you have it at your home, it gives you like a lot of work every year. So if you just want exercise, ripping things down off of everything. And unlike grapes, you know, like from a landscape perspective, one thing you can do is plant Virginia creeper right at the base of a tree, and it will grow up the tree. And it rarely produces a thick vine. Rarely. And you can get it to just completely shroud the trunk of a tree in the autumn. But you can see some of these other plants around here, and these would all be totally appropriate plants. If you live in an area, look at the MNFI's website and see black oak barren, oak savanna. Okay, cool. I can definitely include blue stem goldenrod. I can do heartleaf aster. I can do the thick trefoil. You can do the hog peanut. If you can convince a native plant grower to grow hepatica, you're awesome. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, the deer eat all of this, except the poison ivy.
Deer. Terrible. Some other chinkapins.
It's fun to say, too.
Is that a longhorn beetle? Oh yeah. yeah, cool. Oh, yes. It was already dead? Plain dead. Celastrus, Oriental Bittersweet, we'll just circle all the way up and then we'll...
Poison black cherry.
Oh, cut it down. Nice little sassafras grove right here. You can see all sassafras is a clonal species, so it'll make a colony. And these are really wonderful places to see in the fall because their fall foliage is just ridiculously beautiful. They're also really cool when you're doing a prescribed burn and you hit a grove of sassafras because they have a lot of oil in their bark, and so flames will actually carry up the trunk of the tree, and it puts on a nice fun little show. And then all the trees die, but then the trees are happy to do that because then they sprout up along their clone everywhere. And so where you may have had like 5 sassafras, all of a sudden you'll have just a big thicket of sassafras. We're farmed for sure, based on the understory vegetation. Any area that was plowed the understory growth will be almost completely destroyed. And it's very hard to restore it out in areas like this because you have to bring literally everything back in. These places can survive grazing because what they'll often do is they'll come in, or had done, is they would come in, log everything, put their animals through. This is back when there used to be a lot of the native grasses still in these areas, but the soil wouldn't have been plowed up. And also areas that are hilly and sandy, they generally just don't farm because you can't grow anything. So then flatter areas, what was that?
I didn't say they farmed them well or profitably. That's why it's a park.
Yeah. So generally so Bird Hills in Ann Arbor is a really great example of an area that was logged in one area and then logged and pastured in another area, and then across the road from it you have an area that was plowed. And the difference in those 3 things side by side is just incredible. So along M14 in Bird Hills is one of the highest quality oak hickory woodlands in the state of Michigan. It was just logged one time. North of that, kind of running toward Bird Road on the west side of the east side of the main trail, was an area that was logged and then put to pasture. A lot of the big trees have returned, but the native understory is really, Bird Hills has been undergoing active ecological restoration for 25 years, and it's just starting to get some more native plants into it now. Barton Natural Area, where it had been plowed, is just a disaster of celastrus and buckthorn and honeysuckle, and it's taking just all kinds of work to get just an old field community established. And the 3 areas couldn't be a better example of how different historic impacts change the plant community. Right.
You said what burn makes the soil less fertile?
Burning, it draws nutrients out of the soil because the plant tissues hold on to some nutrients. So when that fire happens, it takes a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen and puts it into the atmosphere. Then gets caught into the cloud and then deposited somewhere else. But it comes out of that area right there. And then if you do, that Norway maple, killing a tree isn't the end of the tree's life. So if, I'm always telling people, just remove their non-native trees. It'll be so much better. You can remove your tree and just lay the log down in your yard and then plant a garden around it and have it, figure out a way to make it part of your garden. You can even do things like, there's a difference of decomposer and insect community composition, whether the log is lying on the ground or is still in the air. So you can cut down a tree, but leave most of it, or leave a lot of it still standing. Cut off all the branches, and then just have a log standing up there. And you know, if you have like some friends that have some good chainsaw carving skills, you can get them to come and chainsaw carve your tree, which is a really awesome treat to give all the kids in your neighborhood. Give them something to, you know, inspire to be when they grow up. And yeah, so, you know, dead wood, very, very, very important component of our ecosystems.